Then next we need to analyze and interpret Bulletin's social and environmental performance. So let's start with the calculations first. There are 2 marks available for calculations. So once again, let the mark allocation guide you. Don't perform too many calculations. Go back to the information provided in the scenario to determine what calculations you are going to perform. You've been given the following non-financial performance indicators. Now, obviously, guys, if we are analyzing environmental performance, that's self-explanatory. It's the impact that the company has on the environment. Is it a positive impact? Is it a negative impact? Then when it comes to social, we are looking at the impact that the company has on people. Do they have a positive or a negative impact on people? So we will be able to use all of these non-financial performance indicators in order to analyze and interpret Bulletin's environmental and social performance. First, you've been given the number of employees. And because you have the information for 20x6 and for 20x5, it's possible to calculate the change in the number of employees. And remember, how do we calculate a movement or the change? We are going to take the current year, we deduct the prior year, and we divide by the prior year. So that's what we'll do for the number of employees. We'll do the same thing for the number of employee injuries. Then for the percentage of black employees, you don't need to perform a calculation because we can see in 20x5, 70% of employees were black, and in 20x6, 75%. So you can easily see that there's been a 5% improvement in that ratio. The same logic applies to the BEE rating. It's improved from a level 4 to a level 3 from the prior year to the current year. There's no calculation over there necessary. Remember, guys, how BEE levels work. The lower the level, the better. So the fact that the level has dropped from a level 4 to a level 3 indicates improved performance. But we'll get to that with our discussion. For now, we're just trying to determine what we're going to calculate. So we'll calculate the change in the number of employees, the change in the number of employee injuries. We won't perform a calculation for the percentage of black employees because we can easily see that there's been an improvement there of 5%. For the BEE rating, the same logic applies. We won't calculate a change. We'll just look at that when we get to our discussion. For electricity usage, water usage, and greenhouse gas emissions, we can calculate a change or a movement from the prior year to the current year. All right, so those are the calculations that we're going to look at. Calculate the change in the number of employees, the number of employee injuries, electricity usage, water usage, and greenhouse gas emissions. Simply by taking the current year, deducting the prior year, and dividing by the prior year. Very, very simple calculations. Then we'll use that for our discussion. So first you should have calculated the change in the number of employees, and you should get an answer of 8.33%, and it's an increase. There's been an increase in the number of employees from the prior year to the current year. Now, when it comes to commenting on these calculations, we're going to follow exactly the same logic as we followed with the profitability ratios. So obviously, you can't interpret the ratio. There's been an increase in the number of employees from the prior year to the current year. It's self-explanatory. Let's compare this to a benchmark, making sure that we use the correct terminology. If there's been an increase in the number of employees, that obviously indicates positive performance because it means that the company is helping with unemployment rates in the country. So that's great. Next, we need to give a possible reason. Now remember, 90% of the time the reasons come from the question, 10% of the time they are general comments. Now, there's no information provided in the scenario. There's nothing we can use which can be a reason as to why the number of employees increased from the prior year to the current year. And I also don't have a general point that I can discuss that makes sense in this scenario because they are dealing with tough economic environment. They are dealing with a decline in demand for printed magazines and newspapers. So I can't give a reason as to why they've increased the number of employees. Apart from the fact that this is positive from a social perspective, there isn't anything else that you can really discuss over here. So don't force it. You stop there and we move on to the next ratio. The number of employee injuries decreased by 16.67% from the prior year to the current year. So that obviously also indicates positive performance. You want employee injuries to be as low as possible. However, especially given the fact that the number of employees increased, so they have more employees on their premises, and despite the fact that there are more employees on the premises, you would expect there to be more injuries then. However, the injuries have still deteriorated even though there are more employees on the premises. So that really does indicate positive performance. Is there a possible reason that we can discuss over here? If you go back to the scenario on the first page, you'll remember you were told that after an unexpected increase in employee workplace injuries, management introduced biannual health and safety training, which is mandatory for all employees, and the production manager also inspects the plant on a weekly basis to identify hazards. So these initiatives, the introduction of the health and safety training and also the plant inspections, have obviously been successful in reducing the number of employee workplace injuries. So that's the discussion point or the reason that you can include in your solution. All right, so let's discuss all of the ratios first, and then where ratio calculations were not necessary, we'll look at other factors that we can also discuss. So next, you should have calculated the change in electricity usage, and you should have seen that there is a 3.46% decrease from the prior year to the current year. So they are using less electricity in the current year, and that's great. Now, something that you can benchmark this to, guys, is the movement in revenue or production. Now, we don't have production volumes. Production is ideal because obviously if they produce more, they should be using more water and electricity. If they produce less, they should be using less water and electricity. We don't have production volumes. However, we do know that revenue deteriorated from the prior year to the current year. However, this really does indicate positive performance because the decrease in electricity usage is more than the drop in revenue. So this isn't just because revenue dropped that they are saving electricity. There's some other reason why they are saving electricity, and that indicates positive performance. Is there a potential reason for this? Remember, you were told that energy metering and control systems have been installed to facilitate energy reduction measures. So that is most likely the reason why there has been a decrease in electricity usage, and that's what you need to include in your suggested solution. Then for water usage, you should have calculated an increase of 18.5% from the prior year to the current year. Now, once again, we can't compare this to production volumes because we don't have that information. However, we do have sales volumes or revenue, and we know that revenue dropped from the prior year to the current year. So if revenue is dropping, we should definitely not have an increase in water usage. So the fact that water usage has increased by such a great amount, or by such a large extent, by 18.5%, definitely indicates negative performance. What is the potential reason for this, or what can I discuss around this? You were specifically told that the introduction of water metering to control consumption and identify leakage is in progress. So this project is still in progress. It hasn't yet been completed. So hopefully after completion, this project should actually have the desired outcomes, and we should see an improvement in water usage. Then the last calculation is the change in greenhouse gas emissions, and here we have an increase of 10.4% from the prior year to the current year. So once again, we don't have production volumes. We follow exactly the same logic as we did with the water usage. We don't have production volumes, but we know revenue has decreased from the prior year to the current year. So if revenue is decreasing, there should not be an increase in greenhouse gas emissions. So this indicates negative performance. However, you were told that a carbon reduction consultancy firm will be appointed in the upcoming financial year, so in the next financial year. And this firm is going to provide guidance on how greenhouse gas emissions can be reduced and how climate change goals can be achieved through the deployment of climate-smart energy projects that strike the right balance between sustainability and cost. So once this project is complete, we should see an improvement in greenhouse gas emissions in the future. All right, so that deals with all of the calculations. We now need to discuss the performance indicators where we did not perform calculations. So the percentage of black employees and the BEE rating. So the percentage of black employees has increased or improved by 5% from the prior year to the current year. And the BEE rating has also improved from the prior year to the current year, because remember, the lower the BEE rating, the better. What you are striving for is a BEE rating or a BEE level of 1. That is your strongest rating. So in both of these areas over here, we see positive performance from a social perspective. Why are we seeing these improvements from the prior year to the current year? Remember, you were told that a transformation committee was established during the current year, and they are responsible for identifying initiatives and monitoring progress towards achieving the company's transformation targets. So within the first year of establishing this transformation committee, they have already achieved or made progress towards their transformation targets. Then there was one other positive environmental factor that you can also include in your solution over here. You'll remember in note 2 we were told that all paper is ethically sourced from environmentally responsible forestry companies. So that's obviously positive from an environmental perspective and should therefore be included in this part of the suggested solution.